Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Long Range Noob Podcast, the podcast for people new to long range shooting, brought to you by people new to long range shooting. I am your host, Jace Leroy, and alongside me today is Ryan. He only needs one shot, Danowski.
Thank you. Thank you, Jace, for that introduction.
You're very welcome. I have a little confession to make, and I think you know what it has to do with. This isn't our first time recording, is it, Ryan?
Oh, I guess not. This is number 2, take 2.
This is take 2. It's not second episode. So we actually we're not only new to long range shooting, but we're also new to podcasting, and we had a couple of hiccups with our first recording. Mostly my fault, and there was some audio issues in there, and we want to make sure we bring the most high production value we possibly can. I even went out and bought a fancy microphone. Ryan, what kind of microphone are you using?
I don't even know. It's just a headset.
What I'm trying to say is I'm trying really hard, and he's not.
I am not.
So Ryan found a headset somewhere laying in
on the side of the road,
somewhere, garbage heap, and he put some electrical tape on it, fired it up, plugged it in, and it seems to be working. No, it's funny. Like, your voice is coming in really good, but hopefully we can avoid the pops. We're having some really bad pops, and so yeah, we just want to be honest with everyone. This is our second go around, and we think the listener will benefit from it. Brief overview of the podcast. Ryan and I have basically started to pursue long range shooting, more so in the last 4 months, give or take. I bought my first rifle for the purpose of long range shooting about a year ago. I bought a Remington 300 Winchester Magnum, and Ryan had he had an AR, a couple pistols, bolt action 22, and a Vepr 308, correct?
Yeah, Vepr 308, 23-inch barrel.
Tell me what a Vepr is, because I didn't know what it was until you kind of told me about it.
Oh, well, it's actually one of the nicest, definitely nicer end of the AK series. It is Russian-made, which is nice. But I bought this specifically kind of for long-range shooting. You know, after playing around, building a couple ARs, having lots of Glocks, Springfield XD, shotguns, all sorts, and bought a Vepr just to kind of get into more long-range stuff. At the time, I thought like, oh yeah, semi-automatic, 308, and 23-inch barrel. That should be great, right? But no.
You weren't getting the results you wanted out of that gun.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. Correct.
Now, that's not to say, I know there are semi-automatic systems out there that people seem to have fantastic success with, shooting clear out to a mile. But I know that it seems like it's easier, perhaps, to get precision out of a bolt action simply because of the way they're machined. Everything seems to be really tight tolerances for cheaper. I think the high-end ARs that are semi-automatic that are good at long range are quite a bit more expensive to get the same amount of precision out of a bolt. Of course, I could be absolutely wrong about that. That's just what it kind of seems to be. So I had my 300 Win Mag about a year ago, and I had some issues with it. Ryan knows the woes I've had with Remington and how I have some dark feelings for Remington, and it is because the first 2 rifles I received from them last year both had really bad chamber issues where you'd fire a factory load and then you couldn't extract the spent casing that was still inside. In fact, you couldn't even get the bolt open, and that happened with 2 different guns in a row. The third one works, so it just seems like there's been a lot of negative things I've seen popping up with Remington over the past year. I've kind of been watching it. They had obviously everyone knows about the trigger recall. They had basically, I want to say like every gun from like 2006 up to 2014 was recalled. If it had the I can't remember what they call their trigger.
Mark X
X
or
Mark Pro.
X Mark Pro?
Is that
Yeah,
Remington?
I think
I think it is. We'll just say that it is. Hopefully, we
it's
haven't
not
mixed
Savage.
Yeah, I think Savage is the Accu
The
trigger.
Accu Trigger. Yeah, that's right.
So
Accu Trigger.
so back to the Remington. They've had some issues. They've had some recalls, and of course, I've talked to Ryan about this before. We agree that just about any company's going to have a bad weapon come out of the factory every now and then. But from
Sure,
my
yeah.
perspective, it seems like Remington's been struggling a lot more
Their
lately.
quality control issues.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Sad day.
anyway, I finally got a rifle that worked, and I've been shooting it and working on finding a good load for it, and I haven't really had great luck with it. And this has been since last year when I got it. It was about last January when I got it. So anyway, more recently, Ryan and I have been going out as often as we can. I'd say about every other weekend on average.
Yeah. And specifically, to do long range shooting.
Yes, and for us, something we've learned is that long range shooting starts at close range. It takes a lot of time behind your gun and a lot of practice of things of just your form and your breathing and all the fundamentals of shooting, and also finding what your gun likes to shoot. If you shoot factory ammo, then you're not really worrying about it, but you also may not be getting the precision that you want, or the precision that your rifle's capable of through factory ammunition.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people do what's called hand loading or reloading. And Ryan and I both load our own ammunition.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan, you've been doing it for quite a while, haven't you?
Yeah, I've actually been doing it for about almost 3 years now. I started mostly with pistol. It's the easiest, I think, by far, to reload. And started with pistol, did some AR-15, the 223, 5.56, what have you. Did that for a little bit. Then actually had bought or built a 300 Blackout chambered AR-15. Both actually built two, both a rifle and a pistol, which is getting actually SBR'd here pretty quick. But anyway, so I reloaded for that for a long time, still do. So yeah, I'm very familiar with the process of reloading, but haven't really reloaded for precision until recently. And so that's been kind of an interesting journey over the last 4 months or so. But Jace, why don't you go ahead and tell what we are reloading for now?
So basically, I'll talk about the benefits of hand loading. And
Oh, sure.
now a lot of people talk about how reload to save money. And for me, yes, you can definitely save money in terms of how much it costs you to shoot per shot compared to factory ammo, but that's not why I reload. Not even close. For me, I reload because it gives me the ability to tailor my cartridges to, down to the 10,000th of an inch in terms of my case size, my overall length, my powder charge to the 10th of a grain, and my bullet seating depth. I can play around with that, and all of these things all add up into the perfect cartridge is kind of what you're after. The perfect load that your gun performs well under. And so I guess I started out reloading for precision because I just started reloading. Let's see, I got my 300 Win Mag about a year ago, and I started reloading about 3 months after that. And this is kind of when it was a lot harder to find supplies. Things have been kind of on the up and up in the industry in terms of finding guns and also reloading materials, because we all know that things were just flying off the shelf when everyone was worried that guns were going to be banned and things like that.
2013 or 13 and 14 kind
Yeah,
of
tough. It
time
was
frame.
tough times for sure. But as I understand it, a lot of people who reload, they don't necessarily reload for precision, so they don't take as much time. They don't put in as much love and care into their cartridges, and they load up 1,000 223 and they go out and have a blast with it. No big deal. I think that's awesome. And same thing with pistols. You can just load up a whole bunch in bulk, but with precision rifles, I've learned that there's something to be considered there, and I guess you can call it precision loading as well, because you can reload kind of haphazardly and just get the job done, but you can also spend the time and energy to load for precision, and I actually have really enjoyed that aspect. I think a lot of people don't really enjoy reloading; it's just kind of a necessary evil.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's really cool to search and find the perfect load for your gun, and it's really rewarding to go out to the range. Did my voice just crack a second ago? Did I say
It could have.
Did I say gun? I think I did. So I think it's really rewarding to go out to the range and shoot a bunch of hand loads that you crafted yourself at home, and start to find the ones that group really well and the ones that don't really group that well. To me, it's just rewarding to go out for a day and find that, and then I kind of feel like you earn it at the reloading bench. So that's why Ryan and I reload, and I've been reloading for. We both picked up new rifles recently. Of course, when we were looking into rifles, I told Ryan I'm not getting another Remington because I don't want to chance it. So we started to look at all the other companies. Howa was among them, Savage, Tika. Was there any other ones?
I did.
Did you look at any Brownings or? Oh yeah, you were looking at a couple of Remingtons.
I was looking at 700s. Even still,
Yeah, you were. I didn't scare you away.
Yeah,
I didn't do my job.
Not as fully as maybe you could have, but
I really tried.
He did. He tried, and I was actually really looking at Savage. I've heard a lot of awesome things about Savage and what they've done. But really, after it came down to it, I think we both settled on Tikas.
Yes.
And let's see, Tikas. They come from
Finland.
Was it Finland? Yeah.
Yes, Finnish. They're owned by Seiko. Or it's the other way around. Seiko and Tika and Beretta are all under the same company. I'm just not sure who owns who.
Yeah, and I do know that they're imported by Beretta.
Yes,
from
and
Finland.
I think Seiko's the mothership.
Right.
For that group. And it seems like we kind of decided on Tika's overnight almost. I was also looking at some Weatherbees.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we did look at Weatherbees.
And then I've never shot Howa, but I've always read good things about Howa. And then Tika, which I had never even heard of. I called them Tika.
Oh.
For quite a while, because I just thought that's how it was pronounced. And then as I educated myself a little more, I realized I was pronouncing that wrong. And I mean, there was just review after review and comment after comment of people saying how much they just loved these rifles and how you just couldn't beat the out-of-the-box accuracy, and they test them in the factory. They shoot a 3-round group. If it's not under 1 minute of angle, which is 1 inch at 100 yards, if it's not under that, then they don't ship it. And I know Weatherby does that as well. And I'm not sure if the other companies do that, but I think that's really, really cool. I remember still when I was a little kid, my dad got his Weatherby 300 Magnum, and it came with a little target with a group shot in it. And I just thought that was the coolest thing that a gun company could do, is send you that. Is like, we stand behind what we do, and here's the proof. And I just always thought that was really cool. And Tika doesn't do that, but they do. It's well documented that they do test their rifles before they're shipped out. So anyway, we decided on it's a Tika CTR
T3s.
T3s, and they're 20-inch barrels.
correct? Yeah.
And Ryan
Threaded.
threaded. They come threaded for a suppressor or a muzzle device, and they also come with a Picatinny top rail, and this is for under $1,000, which I think is pretty awesome. And Ryan went with 308, and I took the plunge and went with a Remington 260 caliber, which I'd never shot and really hadn't even heard much about, but I've heard good things about the 6.5 millimeter cartridges, which that's what Remington 260 shoots, and we have just been smiling ear to ear shooting these guns.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Like my favorite thing about them is the action and just how smooth it is to pull back, and it just feels really good.
Buttery, very buttery.
Buttery. Yeah.
Ryan actually schooled me today. We were out shooting today. We went shooting yesterday and today to do some load development, and he turned to me and said, "How do you like this longer action?" And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about because these guns are short action." And he's like, "No,
and 260.
I'm pretty sure these are long actions. I think Tikka uses like the same platform so that you can essentially change the caliber of your weapon with a barrel swap out."
And different bolt faces necessary as well.
And I never heard of such a thing. I was always under the assumption that every single 308 and anything built off the 308, which the 260 uses a 308 cartridge, 243 uses a 308 cartridge. I thought for sure they were all short actions. So I thought that was really cool that Tikka kind of has this this particular platform that they build off of for, I guess it's all of their calibers, yeah.
Yeah,
at least in the T3 series of weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think it's to maintain like better quality but keep costs down.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Why they do that, but
and we've just, like I said, we've been having a ball with these guns, and I'm still gonna continue working on my 300 Win Mag. I need to get an optic for it because I blinded it by pulling off I have a vortex scope that I stole from the 300 Win Mag, put it on the 260, and since I'm shooting the 260 so much, I think it'll just stay there for now. So yeah, that's where we're at. That's kind of a brief history from Ryan and I's perspective in terms of getting into long range. What we kind of come up with an idea. I was bouncing it off of Ryan about starting a podcast and essentially doing it from the perspective of a couple of guys who are new to the sport, because we are, even though we've been doing it for around a year and more heavily in the last 4 months, we still feel like we're brand new to it. And
yeah, oh sure.
And that's where the name of the podcast comes from, the Long Range Noob. And like I was telling Ryan, I feel like there's so much to learn when it comes to long range shooting and to perfect, that I don't ever see myself not being a newbie to the sport, because I feel like it's just, there's always going to be something to improve and get better on and learn and practice. And so I feel like the name is very fitting. And I also feel like there's kind of a gap out there. There's a lot of podcasts that are firearm centric, but I could only find one that was specific to long range shooting. And it's called the Precision Rifle Podcast, and I definitely recommend it to anyone who's listening. I believe the two hosts are Dan and Kirk, or Kurt. I think it's Kirk. But they have a lot of cool guests come on the show, and that is also something that Ryan and I want to do, is we want to bring knowledgeable guests onto the show that can talk about whatever field they are prominent in. So we're going to try to bring some people in that work in the silencer business, the suppressor business, and people who work maybe in optics, and just all these different topics, to have them come in and share their years and years of knowledge with us. Because to me, that's what it's all about. I just want to suck in as much knowledge as I can and then go out in the field and try to apply it. And to me, that's the fun of the sport, is just trying to get better in all these categories. And I've also talked to Ryan about how it can seem very, I guess it can seem,
Daunting, or
yes, very daunting,
yeah,
because there is so much, but to not get discouraged and to not worry about getting
everything
all,
all at once,
yeah,
you know.
you don't got to
Yeah,
worry about getting everything all at once. If you got to buy it in pieces, chunks, and if you have a crappy scope, that's okay. Go out and shoot at
and
100
shoot.
yards, 200 yards, and just keep pulling that trigger. But something I catch myself doing is, I call it a wasted round. I think, did I do everything I could with that round? Was I paying attention to my breathing, my trigger control, my the positioning of my body on the rifle? Did I practice everything I could, or am I just pulling the trigger? And that's hard to do because there's a lot to remember. But I think as you get behind the weapon more and more, it starts to become muscle memory, and you have to worry about less and less,
Hmm.
and the fundamentals just start coming naturally.
Yeah, sometimes when I realize that I'm just, letting rounds fly and not really minding those specifics, sometimes I have to think to myself, okay, let's take a step back, you know, um, look at what I'm doing, think of the things that I need to be doing, and then, after a minute, go back on and try again, I guess.
It's
But
smart.
with practice, yeah, like you said, with practice, I think that will become more muscle memory and less things that I need to think about.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think you'll start finding yourself always shooting in the same, wherever your breath cadence is at. Some people like to shoot at the top of their breath. Some people like to go in the middle. I myself like to shoot on the natural pause of exhaling. So when I exhale and I'm completely emptied of air, there's kind of a natural pause there before you take your next breath, and that's usually where I pull the trigger. And I say usually because it's not the same all the time, and I'm trying to get it to where it is. But um, I think after I continue doing this for, it may take thousands and thousands of more rounds before I get to the point where I lay behind the rifle and everything's consistent. My legs are spread apart. My feet are flat. My breathing and my heart rate. I'm paying attention to those things subconsciously even before I break the trigger. And so to me, all that stuff, you can do all that stuff in the basement of your house or in your kitchen, just dry firing. It's not going to hurt your gun. I used to think that was the worst thing you could possibly do with a rifle is dry fire it, and i've looked into I've looked into that from lots of reputable sources. It's not going to hurt your weapon.
Hmm.
Now
I
if you
think that was mostly kind of a myth, or well, not really a myth, but mostly applied to older rim fires is what that mostly applied to. But yeah,
Yeah.
any newer modern age type of center fire, it'll be just fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you're sitting there racking your bolt and pulling the trigger all day, every day, you're going to wear things out. But, you know, sit down in your house and go through 20 reps, when you can. And you can really practice a lot of stuff without firing a single round. Now, it's not as fun. I think everyone likes the violent explosion, the controlled violent explosion of shooting around.
Hmm.
Um, but sometimes you can't go out to the range or you can't go shoot. And I've been doing that for quite a while now. Sometimes I'll just lay down on my gun and practice some of those things. And I feel like it's actually been pretty beneficial. So I think that's a pretty good description of where we're coming from. And I just know that when I was starting out with this a year ago, I was, digging into forums. I was on the Reddit Long Range page all the time, reading everything I could. And the one thing I started to notice is I kept coming across all this contradictory information that's floating around out there, whether it's YouTube or forums or Reddit or pretty much any source online that you can come across, and even just talking to people. Um, there's just people get really set in their ways, and they don't want to try different things. They don't want to, they're stubborn. There's guys that, I'm only going to shoot this caliber, or I only shoot this powder, or they're just hurting themselves because there's so much out there, and you just never know how something's going to work until you use it. If you're brand centric and you're stuck using a certain brand, then I think that's a crutch, and I found that to be kind of a plague online because people just get so stuck in their ways, and then misinformation gets thrown around because their uncle's friend who won a tournament shot this type of gun, and now I'm never going to shoot. Yeah, that's the only gun that can shoot.
That's the only yep.
That's it. And then you can only shoot Sierra bullets or Hornady bullets, or because everything else is garbage. It's junk, and it's just not true. There's a lot of good stuff out there, and there's also you'll hear the term. You'll go to a forum and say, I want to buy a cheap optic or a low budget optic, and you'll get a bunch of guys who come in and they'll really rail you for that and tell you you can't go cheap. You got to buy a $3,000 Schmidt and Bender if you plan on doing long range. It's just not true, and they'll quote the buy once, cry once, and that's true to a point. If you're going to go out and buy a cheap optic, you're going to get what you pay for.
Mm-hmm.
But what you can get out of it, I think, sometimes is more than what you need, too. So do I need to go out and buy a $3,000 optic? I don't ever see the reason for that to happen for me. Even if I try to do some competitions and tournaments later on, as I start to increase my skills, Ryan and I both plan on trying to do as many competition-based events as we can, and there's just a lot of things that you don't need the absolute top tiered gear in order to perform well. I've seen a lot of people who've performed very well with middle of the road gear.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
For sure. And that being said, middle of the road gear is still pretty expensive. I mean, we're talking $1,000 to $800, $1,000 for a scope would be mid to low even. A rifle, same thing.
Right. You're looking at your vortexes, your let's see, some of the Bushnells definitely fall into this category.
Yeah, there's some loopholes.
Loopholes.
Just about every brand will make a medium tier, a high tier, and then like an ultra high tier optics. Like Vortex, you can get your Razor HDs, and they're $2,300. That's kind of their high end stuff. Night Force starts, their lower is kind of a lot of people's higher. Or medium.
Medium high.
Yeah, so
about $1,100, I think, for their SHV or.
Yeah, that's their cheapest one, isn't it?
Yeah,
and I think that's a second focal plane scope, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of bare bones, lacking in features, but still good quality glass.
Yes,
their Night Force glass.
Yeah, so it's not cheap. Even going quote unquote cheap isn't exactly cheap, but you can still pay a moderate amount for a gun, moderate amount for a scope, and have a pretty good setup for $1,600 to $1,700.
Oh, sure.
I think when I first got into it, I was like, I gotta get a really good rangefinder, and I gotta get the best glass that I can get, and I gotta get myself a chassis to throw this thing into, and which I did. I got a chassis, I got a rangefinder, and they have come in useful. However, the rangefinder, I think the most I've used it for is to range 100-yard targets, because that's what I've been shooting at 90% of the time. I've been working on tight groups at 100 yards and finding good load development.
Yeah, load data.
Yep. So it's funny that I got a Bushnell Elite 1 mile arc is the name of it, and I highly recommend it. For me, it's been great. But it's capable of ranging out to a mile, and I've been using it for 100 yards.
Well, I think once we both come into our load data, really find that quote unquote perfect load that we're both looking for, and start shooting out much farther than 100 yards, 500 yards,
Mm-hmm.
800 yards, 1,000 yards, maybe even 1,200 yards. I think that rangefinder is going to be a lot more useful
Yeah.
than just that initial 100 goal or kind of milestone that we've got here that we're
Yes.
working on.
our,
So
our big 100-yard
yeah,
plans. So, and don't get me wrong, I love going out and shooting a target at 100 yards and trying to get that tight group. It's hard. And Ryan and I shoot five round groups. A lot of people shoot 3 round. But we like to do 5, not only because it works on your consistency, but it's also pretty telling with load development. You put 2 more rounds in there, and you can go from a half-inch group, and it can open right up to an inch group with 2 more shots. And I think statistically and probability-wise, it's just exponentially easier to get a really tight group with 3 shots than it is 5 shots. So we do 5-shot groups to help us pinpoint which loads are working the best. Like I said, I do really enjoy going out to 100, but I can't wait to start. I think we're on the cusp of pushing it out to 4, 5, 7 and beyond, and then our big goal right now, I think, is to take it out to 1,000 yards and complete what is known here in Utah as the Long Range Shooters of Utah Milk Jug Challenge.
Yeah.
Which I guess describes itself right there. Not too much more to it other than you hit a milk jug at 1,000 yards. And
you only have 10 shots in which to do it.
And I think you're timed.
Yeah, you're timed.
I'm sure you can't sit there all day.
Though I think it's a sufficient amount of time that you can.
Yeah, I think they just don't want you busting out a sandwich and taking 15 minutes to
complete this thing. But 10 round limit. Hit something the size of a milk jug. How big is a milk jug? Is it?
I was actually thinking about that. It can't be more than 8 inches across, right?
Yeah. I happen to have one here next to me.
I happen to have a gallon of milk in my left hand.
And I also have a measuring tape here.
Oh my goodness!
So we've got a milk jug 6 inches across, and
I'm gonna say 12 inches.
About 10.
About 10, so less than 10.
10 inches high.
So that's a sub MOA target for sure.
Sub MOA at 1,000 yards. And what does that mean? I guess sub MOA at 1,000 yards.
We mentioned it earlier. I mentioned that 1 MOA is 1 inch at 100 yards. It's actually just a tiny bit bigger. It's like 1.0. I want to say 1.06. But it's a form of measurement. It stands for minute of angle, and at 100 yards, it describes 1 inch. At 200 yards, it's a 2-inch measurement, and so on. So 300 yards, 3 inch. So you get out to 1,000 yards, and it's 10 inches. And like I said, it's going to be a little bit bigger than that. But for all intents and purposes, you can round it to 1 inch. So when someone says sub MOA, it means that it's smaller than that measurement at whatever range. So if you're at 500 yards, you're going to have 5 inches is going to be 1 minute of angle. So if you shoot a group that's 4 inches at 500 yards, you've just shot a sub MOA group. So if you shoot a half MOA group, that's going to be a 2.5 inch group at 500 yards or a 5 inch group at 1,000 yards. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that makes sense. So
I think that was a fantastic explanation.
So yeah, if a milk jug is 6 inches across and less than 10 inches tall, then that's almost a half
MOA across.
Yeah, it's a little bigger than half MOA. So
yeah, a little bigger.
So yeah, that's not easy. Even with 10 shots, some people might say, "Oh, anyone can walk it on with 10 shots." They can just see where they're hitting on where their misses are and walk it on. And but once you're dealing with 1,000 yards, you're dealing with a lot of stuff. It's not like you're trying to hit an inch at 100 yards anymore, because at 100 yards you're not worrying about spin drift, and you're not worrying about your atmospheric conditions generally, and wind and things like that don't have nearly as much time to jump onto your bullet and ruin what it's trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's me. That's Ryan and I's, I think, kind of our
Kinda
major goal right now,
short-term,
isn't it?
yeah, our short-term kind of milestone, where we
Yeah.
want to be here in the next month or two, you know?
And going back to Long Range Shooters of Utah, LRSU, as they are known, I would look them up on Facebook, regardless of where you live. Join the
Yeah,
group.
here's a little plug for them.
Yeah, absolutely. They've been an insanely good resource, and I think I stumbled on them, or maybe you told me about them. I don't even remember how it happened, but it was only like a month ago,
Hmm.
right? So that's another resource I wish I would have had, is this group, and I guess it's 3,000 people and growing, and this is the thing I like about them. You post a question on there and you get several really good answers. Nobody attacks you, nobody belittles you or makes you feel stupid, because that's the last thing in the world anyone wants to feel when they're trying to learn something. And I think overall, the gun community is very good in that way. People like to take each other under their wings, and I think everyone likes to kind of share the experience. Of course, on the internet, you have trolls, regardless of what you're dealing with. You're going to find those everywhere. But overall, I think the gun community, even though a lot of people, I think, want to villainize them or make them seem like a dangerous group, are actually one of the more level-headed and responsible and nice, kind people and groups that you're going to run into in such large numbers. And Long Range Shooters of Utah is no exception to those traits. And so I would join them. And if you live anywhere in Utah or near Utah, I'm sure they would love to have you come out and try the Milk Jug Challenge. They usually post on the Facebook page when they're going to do that. And if you complete it, you actually get a really cool decal. And I should mention, I think it costs $20 to try the Milk Jug Challenge, and that, I'm sure, helps cover cost of stickers and getting out to the location and providing steel to shoot at, and just time. Ryan and I are going to try that, and hopefully anyone who's continues listening to this podcast will be able to kind of follow us as we progress towards that.
Hear of our glorious success when we
I'm
actually
sure,
do
yeah,
it.
I'm sure you'll hear about our failures before our successes. But and then there's some team-based competitions that come through Utah. I know Vortex puts one on, and there's some other ones that Ryan and I want to throw our hat into and see how high from the bottom we can place.
Oh yeah.
So I think the sport is growing extremely fast. I just see more and more people getting into it, asking questions about it, wanting to go shoot at long ranges, and I think it's just awesome.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things, that's nice about being in Utah. We actually have room and space out here.
We do.
Where a lot of times, you just can't find anywhere to go shoot.
I feel bad for you guys out there that can't shoot or don't have that. And I don't mean to rub salt in the wound by any means, but
right.
I just know there's places that, whether it be laws or just the
population density,
population or private land everywhere. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of private land in here in Utah, but it's still, Ryan and I drive 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and we can go to a place that's 700 yards and even 1,000 if we want to find it, and beyond. There's several places around here, and we live in northern Utah in the more densely populated areas, and it's still really easy comparably to go out. And where I grew up, in central Utah, in a town called Castledale, you could drive 2 minutes outside of town and you could have all the land you wanted to shoot on. And so a little spoiled there, as I hear about more and more people who are like, the closest range I have is 2 hours away and it's 500 yards.
If that.
So yeah, if that. And so for those who do have readily available places to shoot, count your blessings on that.
And if you don't, still listen to our podcast. We hope it'll be fun. But we feel bad for you.
Yeah, like I said, we shoot at short ranges all the time. I feel like that's where it starts anyway, and you can practice on that, and then if you can only go out a couple times a year to a really long range, then at least you're prepared for that. Because if you don't spend any time before that, then your time out there is going to be more frustrating than if you've kind of prepared and been shooting at the shorter ranges. So that's, I guess, maybe a downside to long range is it requires long range, but there really is, I feel that a lot of long range, a big chunk of it, that's a big important chunk of long range is the short range stuff. We have a Facebook page you can follow us on and join, and what we will do there is post when the episodes go live. We will post photos, probably some video content, but the main thing we want is we want people joining it, and we want people asking questions. We will seek out knowledgeable sources, and we'll find the answers to the questions the best we can.
I'm really good at reading.
Yes, Ryan.
So,
Ryan
yes.
is. He went to school and learned. He's literate.
Read.
Out of the two of us, we have one literate, and so you can count on him
to
relay
look up
that
your
to
answer.
me.
Yeah,
and
right.
I can even help.
Jace is our voice. I'm just a background reader. So yeah.
So we would love it if people got involved in the show and submit pictures, show us what you're doing, tell us where you're at in long range. If you're maybe, you're leaps and bounds beyond us and you have some advice for people like us, we would love to hear from anyone on the matter of long range shooting. Please join our Facebook page and be a part of this. Let us know what you think about the podcast, and you can contact us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/Long Range Noob, and that's NOOB. You can also contact us at our email, thelongrangenoob@gmail.com. And you can send us any questions, concerns, or comments. One thing we want to make sure is that the information we are passing along, whether it be our knowledge or something that we've picked up from somewhere else, we just want to make sure everything's as accurate as possible. And we know that we aren't the most knowledgeable individuals when it comes to this, which is kind of the whole point. But if anything comes out that's not correct, or that you would like to set us straight on, by all means, please contact us by Facebook or email us, and we would love to correct that in the next show, is basically how that'll work. So if we have any corrections from fans or listeners, I say fans like
we have them. Yeah.
Yes, like we have them. Because literally we are talking to nobody right now, since this is our very first episode. It's quite the thing. So you can find us on Instagram as well, and I'll make sure Ryan gets on there so he can upload content. It's you can just search Long Range Noob, and you'll find us on there. And go ahead and follow us. We're always posting photos on there. I feel like we've covered everything we wanted to, and I'm sure this podcast will evolve over time. We're definitely not set in our ways. We're just going to let the format kind of find itself. And but we're excited. Right now we're going to plan on doing every 2 weeks an episode, so kind of bi-weekly. And if things start to pick up and we see that there's a lot of interest in it and people are enjoying it and they want more, then that's what we're going to do, and we'll ramp it up to every week. And we will put out an episode every week. And I mentioned earlier, we're going to start hitting up guests that we want to bring onto the show so that we can have them share their perspective of long range shooting and give us feedback on any knowledge they have, and tips and pointers and whatever. And I'm excited.
Yeah, I know. Sounds good. I'm excited too. We're ready to get going with this. So
that's all I care about. As long as Ryan's excited, that was
we're
my
good.
goal. We're good. So until next time, which will be 2 weeks from when you're listening to this, we will see you then.